So I want to talk about rhythm and concepts related to rhythm, okay? The main reason that rhythm is so important is that it gives cohesion to your piece. Now, whether you're doing something spooky or you're doing something calm or urgent, whatever the emotional context is, you want it to be cohesive. Rhythm is essential. It can fluctuate, it can change, but it needs to change and fluctuate in a cohesive way. And we've got a variety of approaches to rhythm in these three examples that I've prepared as part of this course. So you can see some different examples of using rhythm and then incorporate that creatively into your own cues. Now, there's a couple of different elements that you want to understand when talking about rhythm. First thing is tempo. Now, tempo is how fast or slow something is. Then there's time signatures, which has to do with how many beats there are in a measure. And that's kind of like, basically a way of measuring out music and figuring out how patterns are structured. And of course, rhythm is essentially a regular repeating pattern. That's really what rhythm is. It can be a regular repeating pattern on a guitar or a drum. It doesn't have to be percussive in order for it to be rhythm. It just has to have a regular repeating pattern. So let's look at a couple examples. First of all, let's look at rhythm as I have it set up in our urgent cue. So I've got kind of these this timpani starts to accelerate, and then it gets louder and louder, and it starts over again. Let's look at the rhythm that I'm using in the creepy, sort of spooky cue. What I've got here is an actual polyrhythm. So we have a heartbeat sound, which is based on 4/4 time, although it is at irregular intervals. And then I've got this bell that rings in the background. Now, the bell is on 3/4 time. What this polyrhythmic concept does for the listener is it helps the listener feel uneasy because we're using a pattern here that isn't real consistent. It's cohesive because I am making sure that the 4/4 and 3/4 elements are still adhering to the same tempo, which in my project is set to 114 beats per minute, but using the different time signatures creates this kind of disjointed pattern. So in other words, 4/4 and 3/4 only match up several bars down the way. And so the pattern is kind of too long actually for the listener to fully recognize. Unlike a 4/4 pattern where you only need to keep track of 4 bars, in this case, we need to keep track of many more measures than that. So it winds up making the listener feel, first of all, this music's cohesive because it does have a strict tempo. But then on top of that, it has elements that are kind of difficult to wrap your head around. That really makes it feel a little spooky, creepy, uneasy, conveys that kind of feeling. Now, in my calm example, I am actually using rhythm that's based on filtering. So this is rhythmic filtering of a pad sound. And if you listen, it's not really the same as a drum, but I am still conveying a very steady rhythmic cohesion. So rhythm doesn't always have to be a drum or something percussive. It can be a heartbeat, but it can also just be the manner in which a specific instrument tremolos or vibratos, for example. It can be something that's not always just a drum head and a stick, but something that is maybe, you can find ways to be more creative and come up with interesting rhythmic properties in sounds that you may not have previously thought of as being rhythmic. Next, let's talk about using harmony.